Well, the rubber match on the way here. We'll find a victor for the match. Simplicity on the left side with the first pick and the first ban, of course. Trying to figure out where to go, Toli. They're going to ban out the Wukong still.
No surprise. It is Dzoni, of course. You don't want to deal with it. I think that Bakasura is still going to be left open, but maybe this time Simplicity will first pick the Giannis. I think that you don't necessarily ban it away. There's still too many things you want to take away, but the Giannis, that's the enabler.
Well, there it is. It's going to be banned out. Either way, off the table. I agree with you just a little bit too much because that's the idea. Like I said, Johnny's there, but 4 very strong players set him up. And if you take away the setup potential, you just might take away the Johnny potential. Standard bans coming out from the other side of the screen. No Arthur, no Freya. That leaves Simplicity to pick up Naja for genetics a 3rd time in a row. And I like that choice.
It's a very aggressive assassin, but he needs to execute effectively. Didn't have as many plays in game number 2 compared to the previous one, so it's up to him and his squad to get that dual lane pressure and look for something in the jungle. Faeles, keep in mind, was kind of the catalyst as to what sparked Simplicity in that early game lead in game 1. If they want to get a benefit from this Naja support, maybe have Faeles make a presence in that dual lane again.
It's possible. Ratatoskr coming up here will certainly allow Faeles to be a little bit more omnipresent, make his way around the map as time goes on. Agni selected for FaraKrik across the way. We've been talking a lot about FaraKrik being the setup man or the enabler or the catalyst or choose your word of choice, the guy that helps Johnny do the thing. Now, Giannis allows you to get deeper and get out safer, but Agni can do something similar. Long-range bomb stuns, both offensive and defensive options.
I like Wukong for Sibi specifically. His tower dive potential has been great in that game number 2. DeathPanter had no breathing room whatsoever. He survives against Johnny's Bakasura. Here comes Sibi on the Wukong for the cleanup.
Sibi actually did more damage than Johnny's Baka did last game. So
it's fake damage.
They sure... It's Wukong, though. He's going to be fighting, and I like that style. As we look at our 2nd round of bans here, we say goodbye to Achilles, and we say goodbye to Baka. That's an important ban. Johnny's still not chosen. Poseidon banned out by the boys on FlashPoint, and there's a Kali. So Simplicity just staring at Johnny. They're like, all right, no Wukong, no Kali, no Baka. And you know that Giannis, your mid lane, likes to play to let you get out of trouble? That's not allowed either. All 4 of these bans, despite the fact that one of them is a Giannis in the mid lane, are targeted at Johnny.
Kumbhakarna ban as well. I'm like thinking about the remaining junglers that he likes to play. Dodgy potentially could be the go-to of choice. I was thinking another great late game god. It's like I had it at the tip of my mind and I just like forgot it. I'm so sad now.
Well, Erlang Shen going to be chosen here for Simplicity. And there's a Soul. So a mid lane Soul.
A Willish. I was thinking of a Willish. That's what it was, yeah. Because of the knockup from Wukong potentially. And Jing knocking herself up could be another reason.
That's a nice look. It'll be the Mercury, though. This character was banned out game 1 and game 2. And now Johnny has another, what I like to call a hyper carry here in the late game. So FlashPoint certainly setting themselves up as far as picks and bans are concerned to take the game. But will it happen on the battlefield? That's the question we pose to the casters. Take us away.
And I'm going to take you away to game number 3, where we're going to be seeing Johnny on the Mercury. We were wondering which auto attack assassins were left for him, right? With the Arachne and the Bakasura, or not the Arachne, but the Bakasura banned down. And it was Mercury, it turned out, as Sibi going to push up, trying to defend the territory that's rightfully his. Genetics and maniaKK are here, but there's 4 members of FlashPoint to respond. An early dash does put down some damage, but they've got the stuns, the lockdown, and the bring back for Genetics. Nowhere for him to go. FaraKrik finds first blood.
FlashPoint were just, they looked ready for that one. They did not even hesitate in the slightest. 4 members just ultimately prepared to punish anybody who might have been misfortunate enough to look for that early speed buff invade, and maniaK's just going to have to go on back to his own solo lane, where fortunately enough for him, Faeles was still maintaining the standard jungle pathway. So FlashPoint not going to be too devastated, I don't think, off of, or Simplicity, excuse me, not going to be super devastated off missing that early buff invade. It's just rather unfortunate for Genetics.
Yeah, probably if anyone's going to suffer, it'll be, like you said, Genetics there towards the end. So we'll follow along with this Naja, who's now at 100 XP per minute. We'll see if he's able to maintain some relevance as he has just moved over to the duo side of the map, where he belongs, to hang out with everybody else. You know, I'm not booing this strat. I'm just kidding. It's definitely a great early start. Genetic just unfortunately gets caught out. And I think that's the kind of stuff that you have to do. You have to be prepared for them to come look for that invaded speed and have people there just in case.
There's definitely ways to play against that early level 1 speed buff invade, and I think FlashPoint just exemplified that to the T. Just 4-man collapse. You might have 2 people, but we'll just bring twice as many over and see who comes out better in the end for it. And maniaKK, I think there was also some slight miscommunication there between himself and Genetics, because for a moment it looked like Genetics, after he popped the horrific, wanted to keep going because he had that cleave auto effect off the Najah, and it's a pretty heavy, pretty steep attack damage chain as well with the Najah early on. But maniaKK had already like basically disengaged himself to being completely away from the skirmish that I think he just had no intentions of going back in there.
So a poor start for FlashPoint, or for Simplicity, but they must put that behind themselves and keep moving forward. Sibi has the Warrior Tabi completed. He's neglected to go for this Warrior's Blessing at all. He's rushed the boots, and I think maniaKK might be feeling the repercussions of that. Right now, Sibi's hitting hard. There's not much this Erlang Shen can do to try and out-trade the Sun Wukong, so he's kind of playing on the back foot a bit. He's not the only one that's having an interesting start to things, though, Taco. A lot of these builds are worth noting on.
Been seeing a lot of this health chalice into the spam of health pots, and it's not just a style for solo laners either, because I know they have their mana buff that they can rely on for that MP5 sustain, but I've also been seeing this a decent amount with Guardians too, and on Guardians is a little bit more interesting, I feel, because it's got to be an aggressive Guardian for starters if you're going to take that chance, but gods like Najah, I think, can really profit off of the health chalice starting, and we saw Genetics do it in the past. This game, he didn't seem as interested in that start, but I think that the idea is to just have the capability to constantly reinitiate.
Yeah, I like that Genetics has the Guardian's Blessing this time. He's been rushing right into the Talaria up until now and been getting punished even harder when some of his aggression doesn't quite pan out. This time, it's like he has a backup plan, you know, to fall back on. As Faeles was considering a duo lane, or solo lane gank rather, but instead will settle for these Harpies, which spawned the second he got there. Great timing. Now that he has that ultimate, this is usually when Ratatoskr shines, because he can be just about anywhere on the map, and FlashPoint don't have the info, as the stun does land, and Dzoni might be in trouble.
Dzoni is still looking to get away, takes the dash deep towards the back of his T1 tower. Love this aggressive positioning too from Faeles on the Ratatoskr. With the level advantage, he's just constantly posing the threat into the back of Johnny's mind that, like, hey, maybe I'm gonna land on your speed buff, maybe I'm not, but that's for you to find out.
And he's had to play carefully just to make sure that doesn't happen. As despite that early aggression, we've had a somewhat slower pace of these first 4.5 minutes than we have throughout these first 2 games, which is nice. As Kespainify drops the ultimate, they must want aggression in the middle lane. That's exactly it. Genetics has been stunned out, but FlashPoint could find nothing more. So that's the ultimate from Dzoni, and Kespainify dropped, and really nothing expended from Simplicity.
For the Sonic Boom to not connect there, I think is a pretty big deal, and FlashPoint now going to be forced into giving up those left side mid Harpies. And the mid Harpies control, I think, is something that Simplicity has done a pretty solid job of keeping track of. And not only that, but in both of the games that have taken place so far between these 2 teams, I think the winning side just had so much mid Harpy control, and it might not seem like a whole lot, but when you get 3 to 4 consistent cycles of those Harpies, that's like a level and a half.
You're not wrong at all. Controlling that neutral farm can sometimes be the most important thing. We talk a lot about these invades and repeatedly going in and getting extra farm and denying it for your opponent, but controlling these neutral camps is critical as well, as maniaKK finishes the Berserker Shield. I was wondering where he was going to go with the start. It's Warrior's Blessing into this auto attack sustain build that gives him some prots against Sibi.
Genetics, though, gotta be careful. FaraKrik just looking for some poke damage early on, though, from the Agni bombs. I think for Dzoni, he doesn't want to full-on commit just yet with the special delivery onto Genetics, because you never know if you're going to be met with a wind firing wheel shortly after.
I'm glad to talk a little bit about FaraKrik, though, in the middle lane. We saw him do this build path earlier today, Taco. Mage's Blessing for 10%, Chronos Pennant for 20%, and then cooldown boots for another 10 to put him at 40% cooldown total, so he could really spam these bombs. That was with the double blink start though. Fusify and Dzoni had it. This time we got the beads for the Mercury to keep him safer. But I wonder if they're going to play that same strategy where they're engaging a lot, looking for aggressive red buff invades, all centered around FaraKrik being able to spam these bombs.
Well, I think that FlashPoint's composition definitely permits for a lot more map aggression, just because it seems like the AoE that FlashPoint's comp can provide is definitely much wider in range in comparison to Simplicity, who I think are relying a little bit more so around genetics being this setup factor like we've seen in the past couple of games.
Right.
If genetics isn't able to pinpoint one member of FlashPoint and one of the carries at that, then we tend to see a little bit of a collapse there from Simplicity as far as damage is concerned. And I just can't help but be concerned for Simplicity as this game develops, that FlashPoint's area control because of the Agni, because of the Kumbhakarna, it's just going to be too overwhelming.
It's a lot, isn't it, that they have to try and deal with. It does look like they might be trying to play more safe as genetics knocks or gets knocked up by Fusify. That takes him out of one of the Agni bombs. To at least avoid some of the damage. He still has the heal, and he'll be okay now. But it feels like they're trying to play a little bit slower. All this time, Genetics has been going the Talaria boots right away, so he can try and be quick early. But this time he's gone tank boots and Guardian's Blessing, which makes me think he's thinking longer.
Faeles got to be careful here, though. Nice blink in from Fusify, going to force that through the Cosmos, and Faeles, no problem at all to just return to his own side of the map. maniaKK was there, just for good measure, but blue buff has been successfully defended by FlashPoint, and I'm right there with you, Finch. I definitely think that Fusify has kind of been, I think, one of the hit or miss factors of FlashPoint's compositions in these past few games, but with the Kumbhakarna, I love the setup features that he can provide off of the epic uppercut, but more importantly, I just, God, it's just so tough for Simplicity, I think, because every single time that it looks like they might have a promising startup, you always have to worry about something else. It's never just, okay, Darkest Night is over, now we can do this. It's always, well, Darkest Night is over, but what about the Agni Bombs? What about the Epic Uppercut? What about the Sonic Boom? And it's just annoying hard control from FlashPoint.
It's a ton of questions is what it is, right? That they can try and make Simplicity answer. And odds are in their favor that eventually Simplicity will answer wrong and FlashPoint can win the fights. Oh,
also on the whole slowing down the pacing thing, I think that that's also not super uncommon to see, especially through a best-of-3 series between two teams, because the first game is usually all over the place. Second game might be a little bit hectic, but Faeles right now trying to talk between two different members of FlashPoint, but he cannot escape that cudgel even with the dash and the beads.
Well, so far I've liked that Faeles has been aggressive and going into FlashPoint's jungle looking for farm and keeping an eye on where Dzoni is when he finally pays for overstepping as DeathPanter has to retreat. Genetic's been knocked up yet again, and these bombs from FaraKrik are great for control. Unfortunately, the ring bounce off the mark, so they won't get that extra damage, and everyone makes it back out, except for Faeles, who died earlier.
If that ring bounce had hit, might have been enough to bring down Fusify even, and at least
Just
pull that Kumbhakarna passive. Don't think that DeathPanter would have been able to find the autos even with range.
I agree.
It still would have just been, I think, a little bit too much to ask for there without risking their own lives, but FlashPoint are still kicking back, and sometimes that's about all you can ask for, so I think that the intentions are correct and the responses are correct. It's just, how long can Simplicity really hold on to that?
And I think you're right to point out that there's too many questions from FlashPoint, because Simplicity have this double basic attack composition with the Jing and the Soul into the late game. That's going to be scary once they get all their items online. That's true. And they'll have some setup from Faeles and Genetics, but it's not nearly as easy as Agni Bombs, or as Kumbhakarna blinking in, or as a Sonic Boom from Dzoni. Those are really easy crowd control effects that FaraKrik can follow up on, Kespainify can follow up on easy. It feels like Simplicity just have maybe a harder to execute game plan.
But if there's a team that I would rely on for pulling off the execution, I think Simplicity is certainly a few friendly faces that could pull off the
good
task.
Point. It's a good team.
I think that's why they're also willing to go for such high user requirement, I think, for skill level, because if they are even the slightest bit off the mark or just a little bit too late with their follow-up, everything kind of just falls apart.
We saw it in game 2, right? Genetics was actually perfect with his initiation. The blink right into the ultimate on the Kespainify. Everything hit. It just was that he had beats, and that meant that he immediately got blown up in response. And that's kind of what I mean by this high execution comp. It's just a lot more ways for things to go wrong as Genetics has to use the ultimate to get out of danger. Simplicity are able to grab the Pyromancer. He bought them some time. Sash to avoid the bombs, but now he might be too far forward. He gets a little bit of help from DeathPanter, who drops the Supernova, and Genetics might be out, but Sonic Boom hits too, and that's the turnaround that Sibi needed.
And that's the stuff after the stuff that we were just talking about, Finch, but still trying to push forward his FlashPoint.
Faeles.
They might end up just falling back, though, after realizing that Faeles was up in the air with that Ratatoskr ultimate, just waiting for his opportunity to pounce, but FlashPoint refusing to give him even the slightest inch of a promising opportunity there.
But Taco, this is exactly your point, right? We just saw it in action. FlashPoint asked them 3 questions in that fight. First was the epic uppercut, which Genetics answered. Then was the Agni bombs from FaraKrik, which Genetic answered. But then you got to worry about Sonic Boom, and they didn't have the answer for that one. That was 2 big stuns that came on the back end of the fight, and it's just too many layers of initiation for Simplicity to answer.
It just feels like when you're a kid and you're trying to play tag with like everybody else in the neighborhood, and then there's always that one kid that's like, oh, well, you can't hit me, I've got force field powers. That's kind of FlashPoint in a lot of these previous engagements, where right as you think that Simplicity and Genetics, for example, is going to have the perfect outplay, dodging movements that you could imagine, this suddenly is a Sonic Boom flashing by him, and then his life is over before he even has a chance to respond. And really well played by FlashPoint too, of course, just to have everybody in place to make those rotations to begin with.
That's right. Sibi did a good job rotating over to make sure they can clean up Genetics, and it's a good job in the drafting phase as well for them to give themselves this composition that I think works together with the way they've been kind of stacking all their abilities. Simplicity have one thread it feels like they follow, and it's not an easy one, as DeathPanter has the beads and the ultimate all forced out by Sibi and FaraKrik.
I think something else I'm not too keen about, though, with this Simplicity draft is the soul. Not that DeathPanter has done anything wrong by any means, but it's just when you have a Neja as your support, and it's evident that the Genetics wants to be that setup man for his team, but when you're just landing back down into a Supernova, I also feel like there's too many possible escape methods that FlashPoint could utilize to get away from the dangers that Simplicity just have such small chances to effectively use.
They should be good at burning these objectives, but they've been forced off by Fusify, and much more importantly, Kespainify's ult. Fusify has knocked up one, but up in the air is Faeles, waiting on some targets, and he finds a 3-man knockup. Immediately, though, he gets caught by Dzoni to block the dash. That sets up the kill from Faeles, but Aegis doesn't last long enough. He ends up falling, and FaraKrik makes it back out. But now the Genetics and StreakUp are here. They're looking for a little bit more, but these bombs over the wall are better. Genetics has Sibi, but he's coming right back down to pain.
Right back down to pain, but still alive for moments longer. Sibi still looking to give chase, though, onto maniaKK and onto Genetics. We'll get both of them in the process. Still on the run, though, from DeathPanter, but as Soul, he's got to land that stellar burst. Slow is good for a moment, but the sustain from Sibi is just too much.
And DeathPanter's not hitting enough of these autos. Finally, he gets in the end a nice shutdown bonus for DeathPanter, the former SPL mid laner, as I think that was 2 for 2 across the map. It was a long, prolonged engagement, 3 for 3 to try and keep up with. Taco can break it down a little bit better than I can, as StreakUp has to run too.
Well, I was waiting to see if StreakUp would end up being a victim there in the end, but Faeles did die towards the very beginning there, so technically a 3 for 2 exchange right at the very end in favor. But bright side for Simplicity, FlashPoint don't get the Gold Fury, they don't get a T1 tower even, and there's no neutral farm that's really been in favor of either team so far from that last little skirmish. The only thing that I think it was a damage check for both of these teams.
Well, I do want to make sure that despite that kill lead, everyone recognizes Simplicity owned the gold lead right now, about 1,000 gold that's in their favor. The experience much more normalized as there's varied leads and experience differences across the different lanes on the map. So no one clearly out in front experience-wise.
But Simplicity did take the gold lead back into their own hands, and I think that that is something that's super important here, because it's felt a lot more like FlashPoint has been in heavy control of the map so far.
It really
so
has,
for
yeah.
Simplicity to still be finding solid enough farming areas that they can be ahead, well...
What was this aggression? in the middle lane from Simplicity. I do not understand. They couldn't have been expecting Sibi to be there. I suppose Genetics does go up into the air and try and buy some time for Faeles to get in and maybe trade this out. That actually is the case. maniaKK finds Dzoni, and the taunt comes in, so Genetics almost makes it out, but a great rotation from Fusify means it will be 2-for-1 in favor of FlashPoint, and they want maniaKK too. Kespainify whacking away with those bolas. It's just not enough as maniaKK retreats.
That Kumba CC has got to be
Faeles.
so annoying, though. Faeles comes crashing right down onto Kespainify, but could end up costing him his own life. No, just barely clinging onto it after
Where's
the
Bluestone
cudgel.
Pendant when you need it, Taco? Dang.
Thankfully gone.
You don't want that back?
I do not miss Bluestone. I don't think I ever will.
No, you're exactly right. Crusher is a close approximation, I guess, in terms of the passive. But, yeah, we don't want Bluestone Pendant back. But, Taco, why were DeathPanter Genetics that pushed up in the middle lane?
That just felt stubborn from DeathPanter. I think he was really convinced he would have a chance to take down that tower. But also, I believe the Darkest Night had been expended at the same time that DeathPanter was caught inside that T1 tower line from FlashPoint. So even if he wanted to get out in that situation, FlashPoint could have probably just waited out the full duration of that Disapparate and still looked to collapse him regardless. I just think that that was DeathPanter kind of baiting his team into poor positioning after the fact, and fortunately enough for Simplicity, it was only DeathPanter losing the process.
And unfortunately for young man Faeles, he ends up coming in too late to that fight as well with his ultimate. And they almost give up even more on the back end. The StreakUp's letting Kespainify know what it's like to run up against the RNG. Some nice explosive bolts. In for some crits on the left-hand side. The Xbalanque no longer wants the trade. And this is what I meant, by the way, about the experience disparities being all over the place. Because StreakUp's like 2 levels up on Kespainify Xbalanque right now, or a level and a half as he just ticked over to 16. And yet FaraKrik's up against DeathPanter. It just depends on the lane matchup for who has the lead.
I think it's also significantly tougher to try and keep up with the Jing and farm, because StreakUp can just consistently hit those back harpies, although I think he's been trying to allow DeathPanter as much solo farm as possible. Simplicity seemed interested in this Gold Fury, though.
That was great poke on the Fusify. Played about as well as you can ask from Genetics. He set all of that up as DeathPanter follows up. Now it's Faeles up in the air, but the rest of his team's not in position to follow up. He does force out a couple dashes as maniaKK wants Dzoni in the middle lane. That mid tower can fall with a snap as well, as Dzoni has to use the Sonic Boom defensively. But there's a wraparound from Sibi, and Genetics, he wants to make him the target up into the air with the ultimate, but all the while, Gold Fury's been burned. Simplicity grab it.
It's not for a kill. All Genetics had to do was delay and keep Sibi away from that possible steal opportunity with the Sun Wukong. Really well handled by Simplicity, and now with Gold Fury down, this is going to give Simplicity a nice chance to just group up, finish killing off this T1 tower in the mid lane that's been sitting at 10% health forever.
Sibi no longer has a dash, so he might be a sitting duck. A great stun, though, from FaraKrik. That's crazy. That gives him enough time to make it up into the somersault cloud. The tier 1 tower still falls, but you can thank FaraKrik for that.
But Simplicity are still getting everything that they're after right now, and with FlashPoint's Hunter on the opposite side of the map, this Pyromancer could very well go for Simplicity also.
Supernova committed as well, so they will secure the objective. An epic uppercut comes up, and StreakUp in a lot of trouble, but Airstrike just barely gets him out. Though Sibi knows he just needs to get into cudgel range, but Genetics won't let him. A great sash that cuts the bird's pass short, but now can the Naja retreat. Nice pin from maniaKK, and though they'll lose the blue buff, I think Simplicity are happy with how the last minute and a half has gone.
Simplicity got everything for basically nothing. They lose some buffs. A buff. I can't even say some buffs because they literally only lost a buff, a single blue buff, and now
well played.
FlashPoint have, I think, the leisure, or excuse me, Simplicity have the leisure of finally just stepping things back for a second, kind of calming down the toning or the pacing of the game yet again. But that swing from Gold Fury to T1 in mid, straight over into the Pyromancer, that all came as a result of Genetics zoning Sibi away from that Gold Fury pit, because all of Simplicity was then able to just group up, have the numbers ready to collapse onto FlashPoint in the mid lane. I think FlashPoint were anticipating Simplicity to back off after confirming that Gold Fury, but Simplicity, they knew, no, we want more. That T1 tower is not a 6-man when it's that low in health, and they're just forcing the advantage here.
And I love that whole engagement from Genetics. I think that if you're looking to see how you can play the support role better, or what it is that your job is and what you're supposed to be doing in those fights, it's something I like to talk about when I was doing roll call. That's exactly it. Genetics handles the fight with Fusify around the Gold Fury perfectly, with the ring bounce, with the sash to interrupt the root, to make sure he's locked in place for the team to get the kill. Like you said, he zoned away Sibi. He found a sash at the end of it to stop Sibi from getting in range of killing off StreakUp, who got low after the airstrike. I mean, he played that fight perfectly from minute 1 of it to minute end. And that's just something Genetics can sometimes do. Najah is such a strong god, he made use of every single tool that Najah had.
I'm actually kind of surprised, if I'm being honest, Finch, that Simplicity have been able to run this Najah support 3 games in a row
Every
now.
game!
I don't want to say that this Najah support is going to be, you know, the sole reason why Simplicity lose, but if they, or FlashPoint lose, but if FlashPoint does end up going down here, you gotta maybe start to wonder, should we have taken away the Najah?
I think they'll be wondering that after the performance that we've seen so far from Genetics. After the fireworks show we just saw, though, things have slowed down a little bit. There always is a bit of a letdown after the fireworks, and we're seeing that happen now. As Simplicity got to try and defend this Tier 1, FlashPoint are grouping, trying to decide if they want to force it down.
I think that FlashPoint have a chance here, but Genetics got to be careful. FaraKrik does have the Divine Ruin online now, by the way, which might also start to impact the way that these teamfight outcomes actually wind up here, because something that I don't think Simplicity has really had to worry about throughout this set is anti-heal, but DeathPanter with the Bancrofts, I think, kind of just made it easy for FaraKrik to decide, I want this Divine Ruin, and I want to tear DeathPanter apart with it.
Might be some trouble for StreakUp. He goes to the airstrike. That gets him away from Dzoni on this Mercury, and I'm glad that we saw that interaction, because so far we haven't seen a lot from Dzoni on this Mercury pick. He went Hasten Katana into Rage, so this is certainly the crit, the blow you up in just a couple shots build once he gets that Deathbringer online. But so far we haven't seen much of him. He's almost bottom in the player damage charts, 0-2 and 6. Is this just Mercury needs a little bit more time, or have you not seen enough?
I think it's just Dzoni hasn't really had a chance to get as deep into the backline as he's probably wanted to, but that's just because so many of these engagements have been so forward-facing from Simplicity. It hasn't been an instance of a teamfight getting a chance to be spread out by FlashPoint. It's more like Simplicity just 5-man to 4-man swarming, one member of FlashPoint fighting the pick, and then it's just like a collective hive mind. They just go from one target to the next, and it's mostly just been off the back of Simplicity's carries positioning behind their front line, why FlashPoint have definitely struggled, and Dzoni especially, I think, has just not really had anywhere to gank in comparison to the previous games where he had at least DeathPanter on the Poseidon. Poseidon is a significantly easier target to lock down than a Soul, all because of that Disapparate, which is probably why we see DeathPanter on this Soul here. He missed me last game.
That's a great point as Fusify starts this fight off and StreakUp the target. Aegis has already been forced out. A good Supernova means he should punish them for over-aggressing, and Fusify is already in the passive. Simplicity have turned the fight around and found the very first pick as StreakUp has to use airstrike to disengage, but Faeles. He wants more. He can't find the knockup onto FaraKrik, and he can't find the follow-up either. Aegis comes out early, but no stun as maniaKK takes down Kespainify.
One by one, these members of FlashPoint are sent scurrying. DeathPanter now looking to give chase to Dzoni, but Major Luck just reminding him how much damage that can actually do. But with Jing Wei here now, Dzoni on the run.
I'm a little bit surprised. I guess at half HP, he can't look for the turnaround, as the rest of Simplicity are going to try and pull this Gold Fury even without StreakUp here. And they have to be careful. Sibi's nearby. DeathPanter is on his way, but he does not have Supernova for the confirm. It'll be down to the Stellar Burst and the zoning from Genetics, who once again sashes right into the ultimate to make sure they grab it. And Sibi actually could be in trouble, but a 5-man Ox knockup's pretty good.
By the way, that's a big part of the reason why Simplicity are perfectly content with taking Genetics on this Najah every single time. Because even though their buff confirmation might not be better than an Agni bomb, you don't have to worry about objectives being stolen when the only members left to play defense on them from FlashPoint are just going to be taken up into the sky anyway.
It's been great play for him so far. And that was excellent collapse from Simplicity, because the initial target of that engagement was StreakUp, but he buys enough time with the Aegis and the Supernova to get right at it.
But I think it was also poor disengage from FlashPoint. It just seemed like all of their carries had their own individual mindset for what was the best escape scenario for that last fight. And so you saw Dzoni at the far end over by the red buff, and then you saw somehow, or excuse me, FaraKrik at the far end by the red buff, and then Dzoni somehow deep down in Simplicity's side of the map. It just kind of makes you think, well, Is Simplicity collapsing that well? We'll get a chance to find out.
Taunt and Supernova starts the fight off. DeathPanter takes down Kespainify. Unfortunately, maniaKK, though, comes right back at the epic uppercut. That's 1 for 1 as Johnny claims a kill for himself, but FaraKrik isolated between Genetics and Faeles will certainly fall. It's 4 against 3, 2 for 1 in favor of Simplicity so far. Genetics will be the forward pusher, but I don't think they want to go for Fire Giant. They're going to push up this mid wave instead and maybe meet for the tier 2.
Rough stuff so far, though, for FlashPoint, because if I'm Simplicity, I'm looking for the towers all day long also. They've got a Soul and a Jing.
Great point.
And with 2 different members being dead on FlashPoint, the carries at that, there's like no damage right now for FlashPoint. If they want to commit with Johnny, it's going to be tough.
Faeles is going to try and keep Johnny out of the fight. No Sonic Boom available for the Mercury. And I think Simplicity have recognized they probably can't get this Phoenix. But they do have a target up in the air, and that's Johnny. Faeles is there for the follow-up, and they grab the kill. Another great job from Genetics with the setup. This Naja has been the MVP of Game 3 so far. It's not done yet. It has not been written into the record books, but he has played very, very well.
Honestly, I'd say Genetics is the MVP of this entire set.
Yeah.
Simplicity. Almost every single pick and moment of success that has happened in all 3 games for Simplicity has come off the back of Genetics initiation or a Genetics distraction.
This isn't free though, Taco. Fusify and Kespainify are on their way to contest this Fire Giant. Simplicity have a ton of burn between these 2 hunters though, if you want to call Soul a hunter. And Fusify again can't make his way in because of Genetics. Great job frontlining, but they're going to take the fight on the back end as well. Supernova takes down Fusify. Sibi up into the air on the somersault. Cloud is able to avoid getting knocked up and find the heal, but Simplicity want the collapse as they land the slows.
Stellar Bird's going to put a little bit of a slow onto Sibi, but he is deep in Simplicity territory right now, and Finch, I'm starting to really think that there is no real escape for this Wukong. Sibi just looking to waste as much time as possible.
He's hoping he can make his way back to the 72 transformations, and there is that bird form, but now with Faeles here, the stun on the roof, that's the easiest kill you've ever seen. maniaKK puts number 12 up on the screen for Simplicity. They're up nearly 10,000 gold, and with Fire Giant on everyone, the enhanced version, by the way, why not come push down this tier 2?
The worst part about that Sibi pick, though, is that he didn't even buy enough time, really, for anything other than Fusify to respawn, but with these staggered death timers, FlashPoint are still going to be missing out on half of their front line potential here. So, honestly, I take this as a lucky break for them that Simplicity are choosing to back off.
And not force the issue instead. Simplicity probably has some gold they want to spend. That's about all I can think on that one, Taco. So they are going to back and make sure they're properly getting that power spike. StreakUp is at full build. The Lonos is there for Genetics. If you want to hover on that one, that is going to be an extra big defensive push now for this Naja. I mean, they've hit some points where this is a truly scary build for FlashPoint to try and deal with.
I just also think that Johnny on this Mercury might not have been the play. And it's not necessarily Johnny just like performing poorly, so much as it is, I think, Simplicity just understanding how to position against a Mercury with their carry. StreakUp and DeathPanter have been free casting for what feels like the entirety of this 3rd match, Finch. And not only that, but every single time you think that Johnny's about to have a promising Sonic Boom moment, it's just shut down by Faeles, by maniaKK. Faeles being able to sit in the trees for so long because of Through the Cosmos is just allowing him to make callouts, to analyze the entire overview of the engagement as it's happening. And it's just such an obvious advantage right now for Simplicity that Johnny has kind of just been forced out of these fights.
And I really don't even think Faeles has played particularly well mechanically. There's been some knockups and some stuns that have been off the mark that they absolutely needed. But he's still been making a huge impact, exactly like you said. He's been zoning just with his presence very often. The ultimate has been strong too. So I think this is a great just example of team play from this team. Some excellent individual efforts. I love Faeles' contribution, even when things aren't going exactly the way he's planned them out. This Simplicity team's looking strong. I keep saying it though, this game is not over yet, Taco. An Agni on defense and Xbalanque ultimate is still pretty scary.
Yeah, it's never easy to count out late game team fighting potential like that of a Xbalanque, Mercury, and Agni. Even Fusify on this Kumbhakarna
exactly, it's still a good draft.
An incredibly annoying presence to deal with here for Simplicity, and I don't really consider Genetics and maniaKK, while they have seemed super tanky so far, it's a completely different story, I think, once you're actually trying to survive those Phoenix Blasts.
You're right. It is a big difference. As the Oni Fear was picked up, this could be a nice boon for Simplicity as they push. because they'll have those buffed up minion waves to try and create some extra problems for FlashPoint in all of the waves. They'll spawn in all 3 of them. They'll push down an objective by themselves if we give them too much time. So FlashPoint now have to be cognizant of all 3 lanes.
Simplicity, though, taking their time here, and I like this. I don't think there's any rush when you have that Fire Giant already around your waist. Enhanced Fire Giant at that, so keep in mind, 50% of these backdoor protections are going to be able to be ignored, but Johnny might have been up a little bit more than he could chew. Gets the Supernova out of DeathPanter, though, incredibly early on.
That's the stun off the mark from Faeles. Again, that's exactly what I was talking about. That means Johnny can hold on to his beads and his Sonic Boom, and the Supernova's down for nothing. They might be in trouble. They are. StreakUp dies early. He was caught out, and Sonic Boom on the mark. Sibi gets the kill. Good fight from FlashPoint. Now to next target. He's been locked down by that special delivery, the root as well, and FaraKrik gets the kill. They did get the mid-Phoenix, though. That's a big win on the side of Simplicity, but it cost them 2 lives.
There's just so many towers up, though, for FlashPoint that they still haven't had a chance to deal with. Both T1 towers still remaining in those side lanes, so good picks from FlashPoint, don't get me wrong, but I think they get a T2 tower at best here, Finch, and that's still being optimistic.
They gotta get out of here quickly. I don't know about this lazy back. He's directly on a ward from Fusify. That means the Tiger Stun and Fusify can both be there. Mez comes out. This is a certainly dead DeathPanter. Very hard to imagine him finding a way out. Now Faeles in trouble too. I don't think they realized just how dangerous this back was, and they're gonna pay for it.
maniaKK, though, hasn't gone down just yet, but Kespainify quick to change that tune. And Fire Giant has actually just freshly respawned. 3 members from Simplicity still dead. StreakUp's gonna be alive, but it's a Jing Wei. That's not the kind of person you want to be sending into the heart of FlashPoint to contest the Fire Giant.
And they won't even make it in time. This Fire Giant is the enhanced version, and it does belong to FlashPoint. And Taco, I think you would have been exactly right about what FlashPoint can get on the back end of that fight if we don't see DeathPanter and StreakUp stick around that Pyromancer. I get the idea. You want to be able to get the objective, everyone backs, move back into the jungle faster to be there for FG, but instead it cost them 2 extra lives and the objective.
Unnecessarily at that, and that's just DeathPanter caught snoozing. Or at least he thought that FlashPoint wouldn't challenge him, but that's the fun part about competitive play, man, that you love to see, or at least that I love to see, is when these teams that are behind, like Simplicity, and they find 2 picks, they don't just call it quits at that. They could have gone for the T2 tower and completely ignored the Pyromancer, but a lucky ward vision. And I do think it was lucky that they had ward vision on that Pyromancer at that point in time, but hey, if it happens, it happens. And, well, the pick that took place allowed for this enhanced Fire Giant to go through, and now those towers that we were just talking about, FlashPoint not having had a chance to bring down just yet, I think they're going to melt like butter.
Yeah, this Tier 1 tower is a distant memory. So will Simplicity fight on these Tier 2s? Sometimes you do, especially if you have the lead, you don't want to give up too much gold, but I don't know if this is the right call. Fusify can't find the epic uppercut, though, which means he'll have to fall back. Sash comes out from Genetics. It's Faeles, though, who the pressure is on to find some targets to knock up. Kespainify does get hit, but Sibi has zoned everyone. There is no follow-up, and Simplicity fall back to defend on the Phoenix.
Still 2 ults remain for FlashPoint here, and there is going to be a Firewire pushing pretty soon to that mid lane, but I also expect the mid lane to be the next area of focus here if I'm FlashPoint. They've got that enhanced Fire Giant for a little bit longer. Would probably be best to go ahead and push up this mid lane as far as possible, maybe even take down the T2 tower, and who knows, in the process, they might wind up finding a few more picks here onto Simplicity that could very well turn the game around.
Look at this. Pushing up into the jungle. They had to have just seen FlashPoint here. So maybe they're expecting for FlashPoint to not expect that this is going to be the positioning from them. Sibi has pushed up very far. Simplicity have a chance to wrap around. Where are they trying to lock down? They're going to move into the jungle instead. They'll find no one there. They want FaraKrik, who's all alone. Taco, I think you might be right.
FaraKrik has absolutely no idea that the entirety of Simplicity is right on his heels.
Oh,
He's gonna dash straight into the Ninja Sash.
Super dead.
No time at all, by the way, to even react there.
And now they're pinging. They know they've got to hurry up and back because there's nothing to stop Simplicity from just running down this mid-Phoenix if that's the call. But it looks like it isn't. Simplicity are all backing, and perhaps this bait has worked because that means FlashPoint have all backed in response, and they don't lose anything in mid.
But it works for Simplicity.
Yeah,
they
that's what I'm saying.
not only managed to slow down, but that last minute and a half that FlashPoint had to work with, out the window now. FaraKrik should not be the one split pushing by himself. It's just, it's too late in the game now.
I agree, but I mean, do you ever expect that play? I mean, that was reminiscent of Energy's Fire Giant steal.
Yes.
Sure.
I honestly would not put it past any team at this point now, because that's honestly a play that happens in rank all the time.
Well, it ends up happening for FaraKrik here as well, and he pays the price. Now Fusify in some trouble, and this could be a problem if FlashPoint keep getting picked individually. Juking around the Fire Giant until Blinks back up. Fusify should be safe for now. But as you said, FlashPoint's time with this Fire Giant has been sufficiently wasted. They didn't get nearly as much as they potentially could have, and now Simplicity are just about ready to start fighting for this next FG.
And it does go both ways, because sure, FlashPoint didn't get all the gold that they probably could have acquired. They probably could have taken down those last 3 remaining towers there from Simplicity's side of the map had FaraKrik not gotten picked off in the process, and put the mid-Phoenix in danger of being re-sieged by Simplicity. But at the very least, I mean, you get your mid-Phoenix back, it's going to be able to res itself to that half-health mark, no problem. And it's like a restart. It's like a hard reset around this Fire Giant now.
Before we get into this fight, Doug, can you hover on these spectral armors for me for maniaKK and Faeles? These are pretty critical because they are going up against Dzoni on this Mercury right now. So that means they're going to mitigate a lot of this critical strike damage. And I love that we're seeing that itemization. That's not all. StreakUp has one as well. They're trying to make sure that Johnny's not going to be the one that saves this game for FlashPoint.
It's not going to be easy either, but this is what I expected to see for that 6-item slot. I can't say that I'm all that surprised to see Simplicity's carries even looking to prioritize some defenses, because StreakUp without that Spectral, he's probably dead in 2 hits.
He knows it, and this should buy him a little bit more time to maybe get an airstrike off or something like that as Genetics front lines for Simplicity. Did drop the sash and drops it yet again, this time on a Sibi. Immediately blocks the Tiger Stun, so not an easy way out now for the Wukong. That doesn't involve the ult. The rest of FlashPoint don't look perturbed, though. They head right back towards the FG. 37.5 minutes into this game. Taco, it feels like this is virtually even. Any team can win any fight at this point and start making a push to take the game.
It's practically a coin flip, honestly, Finch. I think it all just relies on who gets the better chunk of damage to start things off. And right now, seems like the favor might actually shift over into Simplicity's hands, because Sibi had to attend to that opposite side of the map. Didn't want to risk these minions that have started to build up pretty heavily there in Simplicity's favor to take that left Phoenix for its own. Fusify
drops the epic uppercut, but Sonic Boom being charged by Dzoni. Darkest of Nights turns out the light, and I think that's enough for Fusify to start to disengage. He blinks, but fails. Patient will be able to find the knock up into the stun, and that should proc the passive. But what about the auto attacks in the back end? No one can get into range. Sonic Boom dissects the fight, and that means Simplicity have to fall back. They battle with the decoy instead. They can't find him there, and Sibi forces them out. Somehow Fusify stays alive, and Simplicity can't quite seal that fight.
That was a massive bomb stun, though, from FaraKrik, and not even because of the fact that it stunned everybody in the area, but all those actives that we saw just get activated at once. Aegis from DeathPanter. We also saw the beads get expended there from StreakUp, and a sprint. And I think that that's really important, too, because one big thing that maniaKK has been able to offer in these later team fights is that sprint that's keeping DeathPanter and StreakUp alive, while also empowering them to be even more threatening with their in-hands.
Allow them to get that haste effect and stick onto these targets as FlashPoint yet again reset for the defense. We're almost at 40 minutes now in this game, as I yet again let you all know what time it is. Fire Giant being controlled by FlashPoint, at least in front of that pit, and I think perhaps they don't realize that a couple members of Simplicity have backed, and they had the numbers advantage. They want to lock down Genetics while they can. He's been mezzed, but not rooted. Sash gets him out of there. Ring bounce is nice as well for some damage and some slows, but it's just Sibi and Fusify. They can shrug off a few bits of damage and still look plenty healthy.
Every little tick of damage I see applied onto Fusify just makes me think more and more. It might be near his time to sell that Void Stone. I don't think it's really doing him a whole lot of good right now. 39, nearly 40 minutes deep into this match. These carries are online now, and I think that Fusify definitely needs some better protections here in the late game.
That's not a bad idea, to try and shut down the Soul and this Jing way and move into some defense. Anything in particular you'd want to see from Fusify? A solid magic defense item? I might have to ask you after this fight as Darkness of Nights comes out and maniaKK will be the early target. He's isolated on the front side. He melts like butter on hot toast. FaraKrik gets the kill, and Sonic Boom comes through as well.
That knock-up onto Genetics, though, just threw him so out of position for his team. Now looking to peel for the rest of Simplicity, and nice sash to keep Fusify at bay, but it's still not enough to create enough of a gap for DeathPanter, who will end up falling there to Dzoni.
3 members of Simplicity down, only 1 for FlashPoint. It's just Kespainify. Make that 4 as Genetics falls. Dzoni with the double, finally showing up in the late game with some big-time crits of his own, and it's only Faeles still alive, and this is an easy trade. Send Fusify back to keep Faeles busy while the rest of the team pushes down these structures. They don't have Kespainify the Hunter, but Dzoni can do plenty of damage himself.
Faeles, though, looking for this left side Phoenix, possibly.
He'll be able to find the
Fusify
respawn.
gonna make sure to play defense, though, just in time. But this Kumbhakarna is not the healthiest Kumbhakarna in the world, and neither is this Phoenix Finch.
Yeah, Faeles might have some potential to get this Phoenix, but I still think this is the trade FlashPoint want. As long as the rest of their team can undeterred push in the right side lane, Mez eventually gets Fusify out of there, and this right side Phoenix is in trouble of falling down.
Wait a second. Fusify might be able to sacrifice himself here in case
maniaKK's coming up.
FlashPoint is looking for the end, but with maniaKK respawning just in time, you're right, Finch. That's going to prompt the rest of FlashPoint to just back on out of there. And
Your Titan is under attack.
one downside, though, to FlashPoint, it was a very convincing teamfight win, sure, but they took the right-hand Phoenix. I think in this circumstance, Simplicity are still kind of profiting at the end of it because the punishment is there for sure, don't get me wrong, but if I'm going to lose a Phoenix, I definitely want it to be the one that's closest to the Fire Giant to begin with.
That's right. They'll certainly be able to push up those waves and contest the Fire Giant at the same time. That's why this one is so valuable on the right-hand side of the map. In fact, Simplicity are already considering the Fire Giant. It's down below a quarter, but this is all a bait. They've forced out the Somersault Cloud from Sibi very early on, and so we'll have to consider whether or not to re-engage. But FlashPoint have done enough. Sibi has forced them out, and they've regained control around the Fire Giant pit.
You know what's crazy to think about, though, is the fact that even if FlashPoint have this right-hand Phoenix, if they wipe, they still lose.
Yes, I think so. They could push down that middle Phoenix, I think, without too much trouble from Simplicity. And these 2 Hunters, as the Blink initiates for Fusify and Sibi's off the mark, it does force out Supernova very early on from DeathPanter, and Sibi's into trouble. But FaraKrik over the wall is finding some huge bombs. Everyone on Simplicity now at about half HP. Faeles is up on the tree and considering rejoining the fight, but it's him and Dzoni alone in middle lane.
They've got this awkward 1v1 going on right now between the junglers. Meanwhile, the 4v4 taking place on the right-hand side seems to be a little bit more in Simplicity's favor. Dzoni's got to come up big here. Got the dash out of Faeles, but special delivery still on cooldown, I believe. So Dzoni just going to have to watch Faeles back off, and so far, it's just looking like a stalemate between these 2 teams.
A very even bout that doesn't favor either side just yet. I do get why Fusify was looking for that blink engage, though, around where the Tier 2 tower used to be. The beads at that time were still not up, I think, for StreakUp or for DeathPanter. So if he could have caught them in some control, that could have spelled the end of this game right then and there. But unfortunately, just off the mark, and Simplicity escape.
And on the other side of that, we saw Genetics go whizzing by with that Windfire and Wheels. Had he connected onto Fusify or even Sibi, I think we very well see the smothering from Simplicity shortly after that.
Surprising that Faeles and Dzoni had the 1v1 in mid as well, Taco. Because I got to think that one's going to favor Dzoni with all this crit. But Faeles able to make it out of there A-OK. He should have his ultimate back up soon, as should Dzoni. The Sonic Boom is what you've got to keep your eyes on as Pyromancer goes down. If need be, FlashPoint could now back after one of their fights and get back to the Fire Giant much faster than Simplicity.
Every single one of these slots is getting filled up right now, though, Finch, with the 6th item. The only members still holding on to boots are actually going to be the frontlining members from both of these teams. Well, maniaKK, not so much. He's already swapped out his boots, but Genetics, Sibi, Fusify, they're all still probably not at enough gold just yet to sell their item, get that 1500 elixir of speed plus another item on top of that. But for Fusify, I think I'd definitely like to see something like maybe a Pestilence or a Bulwark, even a lot of magical damage from DeathPanter that has been super problematic for FlashPoint's front line.
It is a bit surprising he hasn't considered revisiting this build at all. You know, the pen boots are still there, the void stone, and those are all things that you'd think at this point he could probably sell for some other options. And then you add in that the speed elixir exists, and he certainly could, as Fire Giant now being burned by FlashPoint. Fusify is zoning out everyone except for maniaKK, who can't make it in time. That means the objective secured for FlashPoint, and they want to fight on the back end as well. Sibi puts in aggressively, but has to use Somersault Cloud to get away. Turn our attention to Faeles, who's up in the sky. He wants Johnny, stops the Sonic Boom in its tracks, but I don't know if he can win the fight on the back end.
Fusify, though, just doing everything that he can to try and stay alive. maniaKK going to be the first one to fall, in fact, and Fusify, he's out of there, still on the run. Faeles gets the blink off in time to save his life from Johnny, but now all of FlashPoint can look to collapse onto DeathPanter and StreakUp.
And the pincer maneuver is here. Sibi goes in first. StreakUp has to use the airstrike to get away, and now the rest of Simplicity are scattered to the winds. DeathPanter by himself, so is Faeles, and I think this soul is dead to rights. What a fight from FlashPoint around the FG, and zoning from Fusify to set up for all of this, Taco. That was perfect.
Johnny, though, cutting it a little bit close there, a couple more in-hands, and I think we definitely would have seen the end of that Mercury here.
It's not enough.
Fusify, yeah, that was a little bit questionable. Trying to push down that right side by himself when he was at 10% health. But hey, you know, sometimes you just gotta experiment.
Relic Dagger picked up. Fusify finally has dropped the pen boots, Taco, so he'll be blinking in a lot more often. Right side Phoenix feels like tissue paper at this point. It falls before Kespainify's Smite on the Xbalanque, and now it's up to Faeles, Genetics, and StreakUp to try and somehow keep FlashPoint out of their base. But they slow down for now. They fall back towards speed. They've got time to work with on trying to figure out when they can push in and take this game away from Simplicity.
Yeah, you cowards. FlashPoint could have gone in there.
I think so too.
I think so. There was so much that had already been expended from Simplicity's side of things, and StreakUp doesn't have those purification beads for about 30 more seconds, and I definitely think that FlashPoint are missing out on an important opportunity because while StreakUp might have had the Aegis on this Jing, I definitely think with all of the hard crowd control that FlashPoint have to offer in their draft, they could have very likely forced this Jing out of the fountain far enough that they could have just then looked to CC her and then kill her.
I think it's fair to say they had some good opportunities as we have another pause coming out. We'll get everything sorted with the players and going to right back into the action. But Taco, we talked about how important this set is already, right? These are two teams that have a chance to finally create some space in those standings to try and move back up and and create some separation between everyone else in this league as we move right back into the action. A Gold Fury being considered, I believe, from FlashPoint, but Genetics there to shut it down.
But all that effort from FlashPoint, and sure they got the Fire Giant for it, but that doesn't mean that they're out of the fire just yet, Finch, because Simplicity are still fighting back tooth and nail every single step of the way, trying to prevent FlashPoint from bringing the series home and moving to that solidified #1 spot in the standings.
What a close game that we have here between these two teams. And without Cold struggling earlier on, I mean, the #1 spot's wide open. It feels like Optimus Gang maybe have the right to it. They were that team that finished the fall split, at least the regular season, at the top and couldn't get it done in the qualifiers. And then Simplicity, a team made up of former SPL players, Faeles and maniaKK and DeathPanter, and then Genetics and StreakUp, who have been SML All-Stars all the last year. I mean, either one of these teams could earn that #1 spot. They all 10 players here have a right to it. And I think that some of that's weighing on them as they know how important this game is, how important this set is. 48 minutes in, you don't want to be the one making a mistake.
Look at this grouping, though, from Simplicity. They're looking to try and ambush
Fusify
FlashPoint super early on.
Fusify.
Fusify
My man
might just make it out of there, but
Sonic Boom?
barely.
Sonic Boom. I should say it like Guile from old Street Fighter every time he charges it up. Sonic Boom. All those old voice lines from Street Fighter 2 are my favorite. They were so good.
I'm just worried, though, for FlashPoint. They don't have a whole lot of time left on this enhanced Fire Giant. Genetics wrapping around the backside. He's so deep by his lonesome, and FlashPoint have yet to realize it.
Genetics in some trouble, and Windfire Wheels doesn't land. That means now he's isolated, but a great taunt from maniaKK buys some space. Supernova is right there to follow up. Sonic Boom doesn't really hit home and fails. Takes down Kespainify. That's a lot of damage removed from FlashPoint's options as they try and keep the fight going. Johnny reconnected Sibi on the left-hand side, but maniaKK is not done. They're going to force out FlashPoint.
No way. They're so stuck right now, though. Without Kespainify, FlashPoint aren't going to be able to push any deeper because 5 members from Simplicity still stand strong, and having to go into melee range to try and bring down any other Phoenixes, I think is just too much of a risk versus reward scenario for FlashPoint because these death timers are so steep right now. Kespainify still out for another 45 seconds or so, by the way, but I think that just boils down to FlashPoint not jumping the gun soon enough. As soon as you see genetics that far up, there is zero reason for this Najat to have survived.
All in commit on him. Taco, I know I just talked about how important this game is and how important that fight was, but I kind of wish you talked with me about Street Fighter 2 sound effects.
I'll be honest with you, Finch. I'm not as familiar with Street Fighter 2.
That's a good reason. It's a good game.
I feel like a
Tiger
fake
uppercut.
Fan. Yeah, see, I don't have the character memorization nearly as down-packed there.
People at home didn't get to see my great Tiger uppercut just now either. It was fantastic.
I was a little bit more on the Neopets wave.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with some Neopets. I could have got down with that. And looks like Simplicity can get down with this Fire Giant. They're the ones here first. Fortis is just about to spawn in. FlashPoint have been zoned out. Remember, there will be no relics available for Kespainify once he makes it back in, so he's still a bit of a sitting duck if genetics can find him with the Windfire Wield. Fusify drops the Epic Uppercut into DeathPanter, and that means a panic Supernova as he's in the darkness of Kespainify's ultimate. But up in the air is Faeles. He still has targets in his sight. The two-man knockup, but Sonic Boom follow-up is immediately there. He gets right back out, though, and genetics can hang inside the party with everyone else. He can tank all the damage, but no, he can't. Kespainify burns him down, even with the mantle. That comes up in favor of FlashPoint.
But FlashPoint, they're not exactly the healthiest bunch right now. Fusify looking to take out this Maga's cloak proc from maniaKK will be successful in his endeavor. Good blink forward there from Johnny. He's going to catch that StreakUp. Gone before he can even get up out of the air with the air strike.
And he charged it immediately. I don't know what more StreakUp could have done there. And Taco, things now looking grim if you're a Simplicity fan at home. FlashPoint 5v3, ready to start pushing it to the right side. Phoenix, and not a lot of options left up for Simplicity. They don't even have any ultimates available to try and defend. Right side Phoenix down. Fire minions coming for the right side wave 2. FlashPoint considering pushing in. Faeles wants FaraKrik, but he can't quite find him.
And DeathPanter trying to build up that heat passive right now, but quick mez from Fusify, sure to put a stop to that. maniaKK now made the target for FlashPoint. Johnny getting that Bloodforge proc, and this is not looking good for Simplicity here, Finch.
Faeles in trouble too. Kespainify cuts him down. That's just DeathPanter left. He has the Supernova, but it's not enough. Epic uppercut to get him out. Titan at half HP. Fire minions in, and FlashPoint, 51 minutes, 42 seconds on the clock. Take game 3 and the set.
Heartbreaking defeat, too, for Simplicity
yeah,
there,
it
if
is,
you
man.
ask me, Finch, because they looked like they were going to be dominant in this final point of the best of 3
That's
series.
a good point. They were so far ahead earlier in this game, weren't they? Wow.
But just a couple of, I think, poor engagements and a couple of really strong, I think, ambushes from FlashPoint were what managed to turn that one around.
To me, Taco, they were living and dying by genetics on this Najah and how good his engagement could be. And we could see it the longer the game went on, the more relics and cooldowns are available to make that harder and harder. And eventually this Najah support just starts to get punished by these late game carries.
And that's exactly what they were looking for. I mean, genetics did everything he could. For what it counts, I mean, I think genetics had a phenomenal set the whole way through, even though they might not have walked away with a set win here. And FlashPoint will now have in control to their name that #1 standing.
EUSML continues to be impressive, and we're still not even done with the day yet. Get it back over to the desk, break down that epic set.
FlashPoint taking all of the time. A nice long set to wind up in their corner. But FlashPoint, again, just fantastic gameplay.
It was interesting how it all started out, right? Because it was genetics that kind of died early to Simplicity's side off of the invade. FlashPoint were well prepared for that early shenanigans, but the problem was that Faeles was already doing his blue buff by the time that they started the speed buff. After that first blood, it didn't even really matter. So that gold disparity, the bounty that you get from first blood, didn't amount to much. The level 5 play allowed Johnny to kind of fall behind a little bit, but unfortunately Faeles couldn't really like snowball that because of Sibi on the Sun Wukong.
Yeah, by the time the Ratatoskr makes it to the middle lane, everything's all even anyway, so not too big of a deal. FlashPoint here, though, this is going to be the setup where Sibi and the jungler just combine to just, oh man, just take care of everyone.
The double kill, I believe, that Sibi had after this specific play, he goes in, he finds, I think it was genetics and also maniaKK, eventually starts boxing against DeathPanter. Couldn't find the third kill. The soul hits a little bit hard once that passive is built up, but that didn't stop Sibi in the late game.
Absolutely not. The Sun Wukong is continuing to be a nuisance as the game goes on and on and on, and that's exactly what you want to do as a Sun Wukong. Some solo laners are a little bit more setup oriented, some solo laners are a little bit more aggressive. Sun Wukong, a nice mix of both, but you've got to be in the middle of everything 9-2 and 14. He absolutely was.
And the thing was, I think a lot of it came down to the frontline composition specifically. Wukong and Kumbhakarna has a lot of control. Those two gods alone have more control combined than compared to Erlang, Ratatoskr, and the Naja. It was a high execution composition from Simplicity that they couldn't really make work in that late game once that last jungle fight came around. Genetics a little bit too far outstretched.
A little bit rough there, but with that victory, that's going to catapult FlashPoint up to that #1 spot. You heard Taco talk it, and here it is, the confirmation in control of the first place. FlashPoint 3-1.
Good spot for them to be in as we're ending week #4 for the European Minor League, but we still got some other North American action to come.
Yeah, it should be very exciting. We've got 2 more matches on the way. North America coming up right now. We'll be right back.